Welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time once again for another episode of Rachel Reviews with a little touch of Rachel Remembers, so let's just hop into it. So, you may or may not be aware that a new Star Wars film is coming out next month called Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, and of course I'm excited about it. But before that movie's released, I thought I would look back at the other theatrical films that have come out so far and give you my thoughts as well as share a couple memories from my experiences with those films. And by the way, yes, I'm very much aware that an international trailer of Rogue One just came out this week, but you know what? I'm not doing a react video to that because I saw the last one and that one already gave me a lot more information than I needed, so yeah, no, it's not happening. I want the suspense, I want the surprise, and I want everything else that the movie has to offer to be saved for the actual movie experience. Thank you very much. Now on with the review. The very first film, which we're talking about today, was simply titled Star Wars, and it was originally released in 1977. Now with all the other episodes in existence, George Lucas would eventually call that movie Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, but me personally, I prefer to call it by its actual theatrical title because clearly the theatrical version is the better version. I'm sure you know the plot of the movie, but whatever. The movie takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. There's this evil empire, see, and it's led by the evil and sinister Darth Vader. They're in the process of taking over the galaxy, and they are dead set on taking out the rebellion, which is led by a spy named Princess Leia. She recently obtained these plans for destroying the Death Star, which is like the Empire's new big base, and she hides them in a droid, and that droid and another droid, they go down to a planet called Tatooine, and they eventually come across a farm boy named Luke. My bae, who then takes the droids to another guy in the desert named Obi-Wan Kenobi. From there they seek the help of a dashing smuggler named Han Solo and his Wookiee friend Chewbacca. One thing leads to another, and they're soon not just on a mission to rescue the princess from the Empire, because in the 70s and 80s we always need a princess to rescue, am I right? And to also take down the Empire before they destroy the rebellion. Now if I remember correctly, the 3 original Star Wars films were re-released in 1997 when I was 9 years old, and my mom took me and my sister to see all 3 of them, because she's fucking awesome like that. And this became my personal official real encounter with Star Wars. And although I didn't know it at the time, these movies would eventually become a very big obsession for me. I don't think I really discovered how massively influential that movie was until years later, but actually I knew at the time it was really special because when we finally got the movies on VHS, I seriously watched this one over and over and over and over again, and I still can't get enough of it to this day. In fact, I even have a framed poster of the film in my dining room. And it's really hard to say why it is I love this movie so much, or even this franchise for that matter when I was growing up, but I think one of the big reasons is that when you think about it, the story of the movie is actually very simple. But simple can be good. It's basically just the good guys going up against the bad guys, and they threw in the rescuing princess scenario in there, so it's just the kind of stuff that we really love to eat up when we're kids. Throw in a lot of fun and adventurous themes, mix that up with some interesting and complex characters, along with some incredible and groundbreaking effects for the time, mix in some interesting ideologies and philosophies, add in a little dash of comedy and wit, and now you have one of the best fantasy sci-fi films of all time. So even if the story is pretty straightforward, the movie itself is still a really big deal, especially for the time of its release. And it's really not hard to see why so many people of every generation have gotten sucked into this movie over the past 40 years. I don't think I need to tell you, but this movie had a huge impact on pop culture when it came out, and it even changed the way filmmaking in general has been done since. Something about the film language of this movie, it just helps establish everything in a way that we understand its significance and its purpose from the moment that we see it. The way that Darth Vader walks in, you just know right away that he is the baddest badass in the entire galaxy. You walk into a place like the Cantina, you know it's really sketchy, but you can still probably find somebody who can help you escape the planet. I think one of the reasons we connect with this movie so much, even though when it starts we don't know too much about it, is because we really get the sense that everything about it has a huge history. You can just see it in everything, from the spaceships to the clothes that everyone wears to the droids. They just all have this like dirty aspect to them, like they've been around for a long time. And I think that we as human beings, especially when we watch films, become really attached to things that feel like they have a background and a lot of significance. And that's what this movie does to so many of its elements. Before this movie came out, a lot of sci-fi fantasy films were usually the B-movie types, and they didn't leave a lot of impressions on people, and they really weren't that popular. But then George Lucas came along with his crazy and unique idea, and suddenly, sci-fi fantasy is something that we can take seriously. And I know I say this about a lot of good films, but really what also makes this movie so good is the characters, their arcs, and how well they play off each other. Even if the writing is a little corny at times, we still find ourselves relating to these characters very deeply. I completely understand why Luke wants to leave his home and fight the rebellion. I admire Leia's stubbornness, and I want to go along with Han's cynicism. Hell, we all know that we like learning about the Force from the wise and dignified Obi-Wan Kenobi. And even the droids, who are basically comic relief, are really enjoyable and refreshing. On paper, those characters could have been annoying, but they're actually welcome because their personalities are not overplayed, and also they do play big parts in the story. I mean, really, you could have just changed R2-D2's name to Plot Device, and it still would have made sense. And he is one of my favorite characters ever, so I'm not complaining. I mean, there is a reason why I have an R2-D2 wallet, for crying out loud. Now, while this particular movie is definitely my favorite Star Wars film, I would be lying if I said that it didn't have any flaws. Sometimes the acting is a little off and the dialogue is definitely not the best. And even though most of the visuals and the design work are insanely creative, you can't help but go into scenes like the cantina and kind of get distracted because most of the aliens look like they came out of bad 1950s sci-fi films. And yes, we're aware there's a lot of plot holes, and the movie would have been over with in like 5 minutes if some guards had been doing their goddamn job. But a lot of those things are forgivable and overlooked because, you know, they're not really exaggerated to the point where we're just like scratching our head through the rest of the movie. And also at the end of the day, it's a fantasy film, and on some level we know that fantasy is not something that we need to look too hard into. And especially when everything else in the movie is so goddamn good. Even though I really enjoyed watching this movie as a kid, I didn't become a fan of Star Wars until probably college because that's when I was able to really enjoy the themes and ideologies that this movie has to offer. Most importantly, I think the best theme of the movie is hope, hence the new title, A New Hope. That and what bringing people together can do, as well as the importance of what we don't see, the Force. And interestingly enough, that kind of reflects what's been going on in our country lately, and maybe we need to kind of remind ourselves of some of that stuff. Now, when I first saw these movies in 1997, I think that was the first initial release of the special editions that we all know George Lucas had no business making. Ugh, the movies were so great to begin with. Why would you tamper with something that everybody already loves? I wasn't aware of the changes that they made at the time, but I do remember watching some of the scenes and thinking that some of the effects were really not that great. Like, you know the scene when Han is talking to Jabba, which by the way was not in the theatrical version? Yeah, I remember specifically thinking at the time, huh, that's CGI. That's really lame. Why'd they keep that in? And remember, I was 9 years old. It just goes to show that even though George Lucas wanted to make these changes, clearly the technology was not ready for it yet. But you know what? Even if we don't like the special edition modifications, I have to admit it's actually still kind of interesting to watch them because clearly, that's what George Lucas always wanted his film to look like. Because at the end of the day, these movies are his baby, and it doesn't matter how much we like the originals, it's still his vision. Okay, if you want to update your movies to how you always wanted them to be, fine, I don't care. But why can't you have the original version on the Blu-ray set too? Well, lucky for me, I do have the 2004 DVD editions, and these do have the theatrical versions on them. So I guess I'll just have to bear with these until they finally give us what they want. Finally, I want to leave on one final note as to why this movie in particular is my personal favorite Star Wars film. And that's because, if I'm not mistaken, I think this movie was originally supposed to be its own individual film. Because if you go back and really think about it, this movie doesn't really give you any clues or hints that there will definitely be a sequel. Besides the fact that Vader does not die, and instead he's just kind of rolled off into space somewhere. It's obviously really hard for us now to think of it as its own standalone movie, especially for those of us who grew up with all the episodes, but without knowing that there are sequels and prequels and everything, actually it kind of makes sense. Because when you think about it, it's really complete on its own. It could have seriously just ended right where it ended at the very end of the film, and that would have been enough. I think the fact that they managed to literally get everything into this movie, from the adventure, the humor, the characters, the themes, I mean literally everything. There is just so much to behold in this one movie viewing. Plus this was the movie that opened us up to this big gigantic world, so yeah, I can't help but love it over all the other ones. Surprisingly, but also not surprisingly, it came together to tell us one of the best stories in cinematic history. What else can I say but it's Star Wars? And how can you not love Star Star Wars. So that about wraps up this review, and now my question this time around is, have you seen the film? And if you did, was it the theatrical or the special editions? Which ones do you like better? And what did you think of it? Oh, what am I talking about? Of course you've seen it. Well, go ahead and leave your comments below. Be sure to like and share. And if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And as always, please be sure to keep checking back for more Adorkable videos and Star Wars reviews coming out real soon. Bye, Adorka Buddies!